How to store ground pork, whether raw or cooked. Does it need to be refrigerated? Can it be frozen to preserve it longer? Here are some tips on how to properly store ground pork to prevent it from spoiling too quickly. Tips for storing ground pork. Ground pork is highly perishable and should not be left out of refrigeration for long. Never leave it at room temperature for more than 2 hours. If the temperature is above 32 degrees Celsius 90 degrees Fahrenheit, limit this to 1 hour. Raw ground pork. Store it in its original packaging in the refrigerator. If removed from the original packaging, place it in an airtight container. Raw ground pork will last about 2 days in the fridge. After this time, it may spoil and become unsafe to consume. If you don't plan to use it within this period, freeze it. Cooked ground pork. Place it in an airtight container and refrigerate. Cooked ground pork will last up to 4 days, as it generally has a slightly longer shelf life in the fridge compared to raw meat. Can you freeze ground pork? Freezing is the best way to preserve ground pork and prevent it from spoiling quickly. Both raw and cooked ground pork can be frozen, but it should be done before the recommended refrigeration period expires. How to freeze. For raw ground pork, wrap it tightly in plastic wrap and place it in an airtight container to prevent freezer burn caused by exposure to cold air. For cooked ground pork, use an airtight container. Freezer storage. Raw ground pork will last about 4 months in the freezer without losing quality. Cooked ground pork will last about 3 months in the freezer. Thawing. When ready to use, thaw the pork in the refrigerator overnight. Thawed raw ground pork will last an additional 48 hours in the refrigerator, while thawed cooked pork will last up to 4 days. How to tell if ground pork has gone bad. Always inspect the appearance and smell of ground pork. Spoiled pork will often lose its color, become slimy, and develop a strong sour odor. If you notice any of these signs, discard it immediately. Do not taste it, as consuming spoiled meat can be dangerous.